Hey guys, I've got this really awesome melodic metal rhythm pattern that I want you to learn today. Now the cool thing about this pattern is we're actually going to play this in 3 different keys. So you'll see what I'm talking about in a second, but it's going to sound a little something like this. Alright guys, we're going to jump right into this lesson, but make sure you hang around till after the video. We're going to have our usual guitar chat. I've got some kind of important points here, and of course I like to get your feedback on those points as well. We always have a cool discussion. Second thing is, if you're a Patreon supporter, you have the guitar tabs and the backing tracks for this lesson that we're about to go through. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, have one simple tier level, there's a link in the description of this video for that. We're in the key of E minor. I am in standard tuning, as most of you already know. Kind of a typical, just chugging away, palm muting that heavy E power chord, and then palm muting that one open string there. Then we go to a C, then we go back to what we started with, okay, back to that E power chord, chugging away. Then we go to a variation of a C power chord, and this is kind of what gives the little riff that edge. And this is one of those takeaway things that I want you guys to really, you know, kind of let soak in here, okay? We played a C power chord the first time around, right? Go back to the chugging away of that E, but then we go back to a C power chord, but we play it a little bit differently. So instead of, we're on the A and the D strings, frets 3 and 5 for the C power chords. So instead of that, we go to 3 and 4, okay? So listen to the difference here. So you hear the difference between those two chords, those two C's, and I think I got a lot more than just 2 C's back in the day in school. There was a lot of D's too. Anyway, let's not talk about that. So back to this lesson here. We're playing that C, you know, the same C power chord, but just playing it differently that second time around. And I like to throw stuff like this in here, just so it gives it that little bit more of an edge. And this is one of the things you can do, and this is why this is so important to take away. And I won't spend so much time on that little part on the other 2 iterations, because we'll kind of just blow right through those. Same riff, different key. We'll get there. But this is one of those things when you feel like you're playing the same thing over and over, or you kind of get stuck writing a riff and stuck not knowing what to play, well, just take one of those power chords and play it a different way that second time around, or maybe every time, or maybe every 3rd or 4th time, however you want to do it. So this is the really important takeaway from this lesson here. Whenever you're feeling stuck, just change up one of those power chords. Change the frets around a little bit on that second note of the power chord. That can really help you kind of break through and just give you a little bit different sound and different vibe. So from there, what we do is we end with this really cool, another different kind of power chord here, okay? Listen to this. What we're doing here is we're kind of doing like a walk up and walk back down, but kind of like halfway, okay, if that makes sense. Meaning we're going from one note, okay, to a higher note, and then we're going back down. So we're walking up, walking right back down here. What I'm doing is basically playing an F sharp, G, F sharp. That's really all I'm doing. However, we're making these into power chords, of course, okay? So that F sharp, we're actually not playing an F sharp power chord. An F sharp power chord would be those first 2 strings, frets 2 and 4. Now you could play this. You could do the F sharp, G, F sharp power chords. but that's not what I'm doing for this particular lesson here, and I'll tell you why in a second. But this is what I'm doing instead. So when we play that F sharp power chord, that second note of the power chord, I'm going to stretch my pinky out a little bit and go to that 5th fret 2nd string there. So technically what that's called is just simply an F sharp over D, which to me just gives you a little bit cooler sound in some circumstances. You don't have to do this every single time. We like to mix things up. You know, that's the beauty of writing your riffs. You're kind of mixing things up along the way. So I'm doing that, then I'm going to a regular G power chord. Okay, so we're going frets 2, 5, then 3, 5 for the G power chord, and then back 2, 5. So to simplify, just listen to this. That's really all I'm doing. And again, it's just a little bit different way to play that F sharp power chord. Gives you a little bit different sound and a little bit different vibe, and just helps kind of, I don't know, spices things up a little bit. Alright, so this is the second iteration of this little melodic pattern that we're doing here, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's the exact same thing as the first iteration that we played in the key of E minor. The only difference is we're playing this in the key of A minor, and all that translates to is just moving everything down one string. Okay, so instead of starting with that heavy E power chord there, we're doing this instead. So instead of the E to C, we're going A minor to the F. Well, I say A minor, we're in the key of A minor, but power chord wise, you know, we just call that an A power chord, but we're doing this. That's it. We're moving everything over one string. Now, the powerful thing in doing this and taking a riff that you write or you're playing that typically starts on that E string, this is the beauty of this part here, guys, and I really want you to capture this here. Try moving that over. Any riff, I don't care what riff it is. I know we're going through this particular one now, but if you want something different, if you want something that sounds a little more fresh and just like, okay, this is really breaking me out of that writer's block or whatever, right? Try playing that riff. It could be a Metallica riff off the Justice album. It could be Megadeth, it could be Slayer, it could be whatever you want. Just try playing it a string over. What's going to happen is you're going to be playing a little bit lighter strings, okay? So that's going to be a little change there because we're used to playing certain riffs on certain strings. Your fingers are going to be playing a riff that they're used to playing in a certain part of the fretboard. Now they're going to be slightly moved over somewhere else. That can trigger things. Just that small little change can just trigger things in your mind. It can trigger some more creative aspects coming out of your playing. Again, I know it doesn't sound like much. You're just moving everything over one string. Not really that big of a deal, but again, trust me on this, guys. Try this. You're doing that same riff, but moving everything a string over. It feels a little different. Just that subtle difference in the string size on some of those strings that you're playing on there, right? And just a little bit slightly different area of the fretboard. Alright, here we are at the third and final iteration of this really cool melodic metal riff that you guys are learning here. Two things here. Number one is, well, we just did the same thing that we did in the second iteration. We just moved everything over one string. You already heard the difference, the different characteristics that you get from those different strings. And I want to reiterate the thing that we talked about when we're going over the second iteration in the key of A minor. I want to just kind of revisit that quickly and just, tell you once again how much these subtle little changes that you make And again, we're just moving everything one string over. How much that can change the vibe and the character of the song that you're writing or the song that you're playing. Remember, we're talking in the last iteration, I was encouraging you to take a song that you normally play on that E string, starting out with the E power chord. Move it one string over. Well, why not move it one more string over, which is what we just did. So this is in the key of D minor. Again, same riff, same progression, right? Same cadence, same everything. We just moved everything over a string. So what we're doing, we're going from that D power chord, and again, I think I might have mentioned this, we are in the key of D minor now. We're going from that D power chord to our next power chord, which is going to be a B flat, okay? But of course, we're playing it with the higher strings, playing that on the G and the B string. So our power chord, we've got to stretch a little bit more for this power chord here. For the G and the B strings, we're on frets 3 and 6, and we're getting this sound. Now let's play a regular B flat. Well, I mean, that's a regular B flat, but let's play it an octave lower, which is where you'd normally play that at. And again, all we're doing here is really just giving the song a little bit different vibe than you would have given it had you played that power chord, you know, in the position where you'd normally play the B flat power chord on that A and D string, right? 1 and 3. Well, instead, we're going to play it down here on the G and the B strings, frets 3 and 6. Now the second time we go around, okay, we're mimicking everything that we've done, right? Iteration 3 of this melodic metal riff is just really just kind of going the same path that we've been on in the first 2 iterations as well. We're just, again, moving everything over a string. So the second time we go back to that B flat power chord, instead of playing frets 3 and 6, we're going to play frets 3 and 5, okay? And I'll let you hear that on what we'll call the regular B flat power chord too. So here's what we're doing. Now, not to get off track here, but you could come up with something really cool just going back and forth on that. Okay, and this is the kind of stuff I really want you guys to just really take off with. I mean, I just kind of came up with that out of the blue, and it sounds very Queensryche-ish, you know, going back to their older albums like, I mean, even Empire, Operation Mindcrime, Rage for Order, going way back there. But anyway, not to get too far off track, but hey, if you happen to get off track with something like that, you know what? Plug into your DAW, or if you're already plugged in, open a track up, start recording that idea, because it's going to be something you'll want to keep. All right, guys, it is time for our guitar chat, but real quick, I want to remind my Patreon supporters, your tabs and the backing tracks, those are out there right now. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, I provide just one simple, inexpensive tier level, and basically what I do is I give you the tabs and the backing tracks to at least 2 of my YouTube lessons each month. So there's a link for all that in the description of this YouTube video. And real quick, while you're there, check out the other links as well. If you don't have my free Metal Riffs and Licks practice guide, do grab a copy of that. I've got some other good stuff that I give you as well. And of course, I've got my guitar courses there as well. I've got Metal Guitar Apprentice. If you're just starting to get into playing metal, then you'll definitely want to get into that course. And then there's the flagship of all metal courses, my Metal Riff Master course. I know a lot of you are in both those courses, and thank you for the support, by the way. But guys, do check those out. That's all in the YouTube description of this video here. So there are a couple of things that you'll notice about this lesson, okay? For one, I know we pointed out the obvious that, hey, it's the same riff, just in a different key. And we simplified the process by just moving over one string. And I just want to reiterate how important that is when you're writing music, or even if you're playing somebody else's riff. Take that riff, play it one string over, right? Just those different strings and those different notes that you'll be playing, it's enough to make it, to change the vibe, to make the riff different and change the vibe of that entire song. And it just takes you creatively to a new place, if that makes sense. Now, another thing that you'll notice, and by the way, let me just back up. By the way, that's a great way to get out of a rut. I know we talk about that a lot, getting out of that writing rut when all your riffs sound the same. Look, I'm sure James Hetfield experienced that, and I think even the greatest of songwriters and musicians, they kind of hit that wall from time to time. It's like, man, everything I play just kind of sounds the same. Just those subtle little changes that you make by playing in a different key, playing that same riff maybe on the next string over, that can sometimes be enough to break free from that, and then other ideas will flow from that as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Now, the second and the last thing I want to cover real quick is you'll notice this particular riff, or well, the three for one riff here, is there's three of them. This particular riff, it was not a complicated riff at all. In fact, we didn't do a whole lot of finger movement in this. It's mostly just playing, power chords or variations of power chords. It was pretty simple. That does not necessarily mean that this is a beginner style video. And the reason I bring this up real quick, is because sometimes we just get this fetish over having to write the most complicated riff in the world. Well, it doesn't have enough notes, so we can't use that. It's got to be more notes. Oh, it's got to be faster. It's got to be this or got to be that. When you're writing a song, when you're writing a riff, if that's not the vibe that's naturally coming out, hey, maybe don't force it. Maybe this riff needs to be simple, or maybe it's just that one part of the song, right? Maybe you're writing the chorus of the song. Maybe you want to highlight the vocals a little bit more, and maybe not so much the guitar parts in that specific part of the song. Be okay with that. That's okay. And understand that you had to assess who you're writing this for anyway. Are you trying to impress other guitar players? And that's fine if that's the case. Or is your goal to write riffs and write music that just sound cool? Now, sometimes those may be complex riffs. They may have a lot of movement, a lot of notes, but sometimes they may not. Sometimes it's those simple pieces of music that are more captivating and that just kind of like grab the listener. And at the end of the day, that's really the effect that you want. I'm really trying to be careful in my writing lately. Not careful, I'm writing just what comes out. I think you should always just let it naturally flow. But I think that sometimes we try to force complications in the music. And again, it's not always a bad thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't challenge yourself, but I'm also saying that maybe find that fine balance in between. It's like, okay, well, maybe this part of the song, or maybe this entire song, maybe it doesn't call for that. Maybe this is more of a power chord driven song, and that's what's going to make that song have a more powerful impact versus trying to make a song with a gazillion notes and yada yada. So I think you get what I'm saying here. But really assess who you're writing for. Are you writing for just guitar players, right? Do you want to write riffs that only guitar players are going to appreciate? Or do you want to write music that, more people, metalhead or not, that they're going to like your music and be like, oh, that's pretty cool. But going back to my own writing, what I was saying about being careful, I'm trying to be careful that, okay, this is what's naturally wanting to come out. I'm not going to try to force more notes into it just so guitar players might like it a little bit more, or might like to say, oh, well, how do you play that, And look, that stuff is cool, but I've never been really one of those, bet you can't play this type of people. I just don't really care. A lot of riffs that are overly complicated, they just, I don't know, they don't captivate me as much. I'm more of a melodic person anyway. And I'm not speaking against complicated riffs. I'm not. If you see the shirt I'm wearing, hey, there were some complicated riffs. If you were around in the 80s, or well, this came out in 88, if you were around during that time as a guitar player and you heard Justice for All for the first time and trying to play Black End and several other songs, it's like, oh man, this is something that we've never heard before, right? So it was really cool. But then there's a lot of parts, and I guess I'm talking about this album because I'm wearing the shirt here. And I got a Puppets poster. You guys think I'm a Metallica fanboy. Hey, look, these two albums are why I started playing guitar. So I unashamedly admit I'm a big Metallica fan. I've always loved them. I haven't really gotten into their newer stuff so much, but it's not to say it's not good. I probably just should listen to it. Anyway, back to my point, there are also a lot of pieces of music within the Justice for All album, even on Puppets, where it's not complex. The music's just driving. It's like, okay, this is the foundation here. Think of certain parts in Shortest Straw, the chorus of that song. It's just the first one that pops in my head. You know, it's really highlighting more of the vocals and what's going on there. Yeah, you've got some cool guitar parts, but it's not, well, we got to fill this thing up with more notes. Then, of course, you get to songs like I mentioned, Black, and you know, you've got that really cool intro there. You get into stuff like that where there's more finger movement, right? But then you get to what my good friend Eddie calls, oh, here comes the shuns, you know, when they start doing that part. It's just that heavy palm muting on that E power chord and a few other power chords thrown in there. Find that balance for you. Now, you may be a guitar player that you just love complicated stuff, and that's your thing. Hey, go for it. Again, I'm not speaking against it, but I think a lot of people, when they're writing music, sometimes we get caught up into, well, I wonder what guitar players are going to think about this. Are they going to make fun of this and say, well, that's not real metal because it wasn't fast enough, or blah, blah, blah. I want to encourage you to get that out of your head. I have to say this to myself at times too. You may have a song on an album that you're writing that song might be all, you know, power chords. It might not be any riffs. And you might have track 3 on that same album that's filled with riffs. Some of them may be complex, some of them may not. Some of them may be just a simple melodic pattern. But you know what? Oftentimes it's that melodic pattern, that melodic series of notes that will relate to the listener, and it will be catchy, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's it. That's what gets me moving. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I know this little end of the chat here didn't really have a whole lot to do with the lesson other than the guitar riff that I shared with you guys. It wasn't overly complicated. I didn't want it to be. You know, I thought about what we're talking about right now when I was doing this lesson. I'm like, should I throw in some more chops? Should I throw in some more single note patterns, you know, riffing, that sort of thing? And then I'm like, no, that's not what this particular riff is calling for. Okay, so there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I love having these guitar chats. I feel like we're all in the studio here just chatting about music and drinking coffee and whatever else you're drinking. You know, I'll probably have a beer later. Actually, I've been recovering from a cold. So I probably won't have a beer later, but in a couple days. Anyway, guys, drop me your questions in the comments, or if you have any comments you'd like to leave regarding what we talked about today. I always love to read those, and I appreciate all your comments as well. Guys, thank you for the support. Give this video a like, please. YouTube likes that, and hey, so do I. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Real quick update. I know I updated you on the last video. I think my last video was an acoustic video. If you want to go back and check that out, I was talking about, you know, we had key changes in this video here. In that video, I was talking about transposing music. So if that's something that you're interested in, especially with cover songs, then check that video out. But I am making, real quick and I'll end, I'm going to be making just kind of like a bare bones beginners YouTube series here pretty soon on guitar. I'll probably be filming most of that on my acoustic. So I know I put a post out there, and a lot of you guys are like, yeah, do that. So that is coming. My voice is a little coming back from this cold that I had this week. So once I feel like it's 100%, I'm just gonna film all these videos in one day and just start putting them out there. So I hope to have that in about a week or so. So guys, thank you once again. I'll see you on the next video. You guys know what to do until then. Keep it metal.